What happens when the woman once welcomed as a fresh face of royalty suddenly finds herself knocking on doors that refuse to open? What happens when Meghan Markle, the Duchess who captivated the world with her fairy tale wedding and bold exit from the monarchy, seeks validation in the glossy pages of fashion's most powerful magazine, only to be met with Anna Wintour's cold, immovable silence? That's not just a headline. That's a story of rejection, envy, and a desperate hunger for influence colliding with the unflinching gatekeeper of style. And the fallout is far messier than anyone could have imagined. Think about it for a second. In an industry where a single Vogue cover can crown you a cultural icon, where does that leave someone like Meghan Markle when she's denied? Vogue has always been the holy grail, the stage where celebrities, supermodels, and even royals have cemented their legacy. Diana did it. Kate did it. Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner did it. Together, no less, in a high-voltage 2025 shoot that had the fashion world buzzing. But Meghan? The woman who has built her entire post-royal identity around image and influence? She was told no. Not maybe. Not later. Simply no. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And here's where it gets deliciously ironic. Shortly after that buzzworthy Vogue shoot featuring Gigi and Kendall, Meghan was spotted in public wearing an outfit that was almost a carbon copy of Gigi's look. The same cut, the same palette, the same vibe. Coincidence? Or was Meghan making a not-so-subtle statement? If Vogue won't put me on their cover, I'll make myself the cover. But here's the problem. Copying isn't leading. And in the world of high fashion, imitation can be the kiss of death. Let's rewind for a moment. Meghan has always been hyper-aware of her image. Even before Harry, before the titles, before the drama, she cultivated a lifestyle brand with her now-defunct blog, The Tig. She wanted to be seen as aspirational, chic, the woman you'd want to follow for tips on wine, travel, and style. So it makes perfect sense that once she became Duchess, she saw Vogue as her rightful stage. But what she didn't count on was that Anna Wintour, famously icy, famously selective, and famously unimpressed by desperation, was not buying it. Why does this matter right now? Because Vogue in 2025 isn't the same Vogue it was a decade ago. The magazine has doubled down on cultural relevance, leaning into the voices of a generation obsessed with authenticity. Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner, whether you love them or not, represent the zeitgeist of fashion, young, trend-setting, with their fingers firmly on the pulse of youth culture. Meghan, by contrast, has a brand stuck somewhere between activism, Hollywood royalty, and victimhood. To Anna Wintour, who has built her empire on controlling the narrative of who deserves that glossy spotlight, Meghan simply didn't fit. But here's the real kicker. Meghan wasn't just brushed aside quietly. Insiders suggest Anna's team made it clear Meghan was not a candidate for the cover. And when word of that rejection started circulating, Meghan's strategy began to unravel. Think about the optics. Here's a woman who positions herself as powerful, independent, unstoppable, and yet she was being stopped by a single word from Anna Wintour. No. And that no reverberated across the worlds of fashion, Hollywood, and royalty. Now, let's inject some reality here. Meghan is not the first royal to seek validation from Vogue. Diana's covers became instant classics, with her photographed as both regal and vulnerable, a duality that captured the world. Kate Middleton, Duchess of Cambridge, appeared on the centenary issue of British Vogue, praised for her natural style and understated grace. Both women understood the balance between fashion and authenticity. Meghan, on the other hand, has often tried too hard, forcing a narrative rather than letting it unfold naturally. And when you try too hard in Anna Wintour's world, you lose. But ask yourself this. What does rejection from Vogue really symbolize? Is it about fashion, or is it about something deeper? For Meghan, the refusal is more than just about glossy pages. It's about status. A Vogue cover is a coronation in the modern age, especially in the absence of royal duties. Without it, Meghan isn't seen as a fashion leader, but as an outsider desperately pressing her face against the glass of high society. That desperation, whether fair or not, is what critics seized on. And then came the outfit. Meghan stepping out in what looked suspiciously like a Gigi Hadid look straight from her Vogue shoot. The internet lit up. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Side-by-side comparisons flooded the feeds. People asked, was this Meghan's way of showing Vogue what they missed out on? Or was it a miscalculated attempt to ride the coattails of relevance? Either way, it backfired. Because rather than being praised, Meghan was accused of copying. And for a woman who has spent years fighting accusations of inauthenticity, this was the last thing she needed. Here's the contradiction. Meghan wanted to be seen as original, powerful, trend-setting. But by echoing someone else's look, especially someone who had just graced Vogue, she cemented the opposite impression. It wasn't leadership. It was following. And in the brutal world of fashion, where image is everything, following is unforgivable. And let's not ignore the emotional undercurrent here. Imagine the sting. Meghan Markle, once celebrated as a modern-day fairy tale heroine, is now being cast as a wannabe. Imagine knowing that Anna Wintour, the woman who decides who is in and who is out, has placed you firmly in the out category. Imagine watching Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner on the cover of Vogue while your own calls go unanswered. That's not just rejection, it's humiliation. But humiliation breeds obsession. And insiders whisper that Meghan has become laser-focused on breaking into the fashion world, even as Hollywood and the royals keep her at arm's length. She's trying every angle: PR campaigns, fashion collaborations, strategic friendships. Yet every move only highlights the one door she cannot open, the one guarded by Anna Wintour. So why does Anna's no matter so much? Because when Anna Wintour says no, it's not just a personal rejection. It's a signal to the entire fashion industry. Editors, photographers, designers, they all take their cues from Vogue's queen. Meghan might land in smaller magazines. She might even score collaborations. But without Vogue, she is forever outside the gates of true fashion royalty. And Meghan knows it. That's why the copycat scandal matters. It wasn't just about clothes. It was about credibility. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because Meghan's rejection wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was happening while her Hollywood star was already flickering, while critics were questioning her relevance, while Netflix projects stumbled and Spotify deals evaporated. The Vogue rejection became a symbol of a larger truth, that Meghan Markle's power to command the global stage might be waning. And yet, this is where it gets even more intriguing. The story didn't end with Anna Wintour's no. In fact, that no was just the beginning. Because Meghan, as history has shown, doesn't simply walk away from rejection. She fights back. She strategizes. She finds another way. And the outfit she copied from Gigi Hadid's Vogue shoot? That was just her opening move in a much bigger, much riskier game. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. They said Meghan Markle wanted the crown. But what she really wanted, what she still wants, is the cover. Not the crown jewels, not the palace halls, not the bowing courtiers. A Vogue cover. Think about that for a moment. Out of all the symbols of power, out of all the trappings of status, Meghan has locked her sights on the glossy, carefully curated square of a magazine front that tells the world who matters. And the irony? This quest for fashion immortality may be the one throne she'll never sit on. Why? Because of Anna Wintour. The sunglasses. The bob. The ice in her tone that can silence an entire industry. She's not just an editor. She's an empress in her own right. And if Anna says no, every designer, photographer, and advertiser follows suit. And Meghan, who once thought she could outshine Kate Middleton, outmaneuver the royal family, and outsmart the tabloids, has come up against her hardest opponent yet. A gatekeeper she cannot charm, guilt, or outmaneuver. Let's rewind the clock. Meghan's relationship with Vogue didn't start with this rumored rejection. Back in 2019, she got a taste of it. She didn't appear on the cover herself, but she was given something even rarer, the role of guest editor for British Vogue's September issue, the most important edition of the year. It was a bold move by editor Edward Ninful, who handed her the reins to shape the content around Forces for Change, highlighting women Meghan considered inspiring. But even then, controversy brewed. Critics accused her of being political, of self-aggrandizement, of making it about herself. The cover itself, notably, did not feature Meghan's face. A choice that may have stung then, and one that haunts her now. Because here's the truth. While she edited British Vogue, she was never front and center. She wasn't immortalized like Princess Diana, whose 1991 Vogue cover in a simple black turtleneck remains iconic. She wasn't celebrated like Kate Middleton, who graced the cover of British Vogue's centenary issue in 2016, photographed with understated, approachable grace. Meghan got close. She touched the edge of the throne, but she didn't wear the crown. And to someone as hyper-conscious of legacy and image as Meghan, that gap is unbearable. Fast forward to now. Meghan has left the monarchy. She's built, or tried to build, a Hollywood brand. Deals with Netflix, Spotify, glossy interviews with Oprah. Yet none of those things have given her what she craves most: recognition in the world of fashion as an icon, not just a former royal. And this is where Anna Wintour comes in. Meghan's team, according to whispers, reached out. They pitched. They nudged. They suggested Meghan as the perfect candidate for a U.S. Vogue cover. After all, she's American. She's global. She's controversial. She's a household name. But Anna? Anna was unmoved. She didn't bite. She didn't see Meghan as cover-worthy. And in the brutal language of Vogue, a no isn't just rejection. It's exile. Meghan Markle wasn't just passed over. She was officially marked as irrelevant in the one space she desperately wanted to dominate. Now let's pause here and ask, why would Anna say no? Why Meghan? Why now? The answers lie in three uncomfortable truths. First, Meghan's brand is toxic in fashion circles. To you and me, she's tabloid gold. But to advertisers who pay Vogue's bills, Meghan is risky. Too much baggage, too many lawsuits, too many victim headlines. Fashion thrives on fantasy. Meghan, for all her glamour, drags reality into the room. Second, she's simply not fashion first. Compare her to Gigi Hadid or Kendall Jenner, who live and breathe the runway. Meghan's style is serviceable, sometimes chic, but rarely daring. She doesn't lead trends, she follows them. And in Anna's eyes, that's unforgivable. Third, there's competition. Gigi and Kendall were already lined up for the coveted 2025 Vogue feature. Their shoot buzzed across the industry, futuristic silhouettes, sharp cuts, dripping with relevance. Meghan didn't stand a chance against that level of cultural dominance. And yet, this is where the story twists into irony. Because shortly after that shoot, Meghan appeared in public wearing an outfit that was eerily similar to Gigi's look. Practically a mirror image. The same sleek tailoring. The same muted tones. It was as if Meghan had stepped out of the pages of Vogue without ever being invited. Coincidence? Or a desperate attempt to send a message? See, I can be Vogue too. This is where we hit the nerve. Because in the fashion world, copying is not homage. It's humiliation. To the naked eye, Meghan was simply dressed well. But to fashion insiders, it was transparent. It looked like mimicry. It looked like desperation. And when paired with the knowledge that Anna Wintour had said no, the optics couldn't be worse. Meghan wasn't leading. She was chasing. Let me ask you, how does a woman who once thought she could redefine royalty end up reduced to borrowing the style of 20-something supermodels? How does someone who wanted to be Diana 2.0 find herself accused of imitation, not innovation? That's the tragedy here. Meghan's quest for validation backfired spectacularly. But this story isn't just about clothes. No, it runs deeper. Meghan's rejection by Vogue symbolizes something far greater: her struggle to control the narrative of her own legacy. She's been fighting on multiple fronts, against the royals, against the press, against Hollywood's cold shoulder. And now, against Anna Wintour. Every battle ends the same way. Meghan trying to wrestle back power through image, and instead exposing just how fragile that power is. In the fashion world, they love a fall. They adore irony. They thrive on the cycle of building up icons and tearing them down. Meghan thought she could slip into Gigi's silhouette and steal a bit of the spotlight. Instead, she confirmed exactly why Anna Wintour had closed the door in the first place. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Because Meghan's rejection by Vogue didn't just silence her. It sparked a conversation in the upper echelons of fashion. Editors began to whisper, if Meghan Markle can't get a cover, what does that mean for her brand? Designers began to hesitate. Is dressing Meghan worth the risk? Photographers asked themselves, will this project ever see the light of day if Anna disapproves? When Anna Wintour says no, it's not one door closing. It's a domino effect. And Meghan is watching the dominoes fall. Yet Meghan Markle is not someone who walks away quietly. She doesn't retreat. She recalibrates. Which brings us to the next chapter of this saga. Because Meghan wasn't done. Not by a long shot. She had other strategies, other angles, other moves to make. She wasn't going to accept exile from Vogue without a fight. And the next move she made? It would shock Hollywood, fashion, and the royals alike. They said Meghan Markle left the royal family for freedom. But freedom, as it turned out, wasn't enough. She wanted something more glittering, more glamorous, more culturally immortal. She wanted to reinvent herself, not as a duchess, not as an activist, but as a Hollywood power player with fashion credibility to match. And in that reinvention, she saw a pathway paved not with palaces or parliaments, but with glossy magazine pages. Think about this. After the Megxit storm of 2020, Meghan and Harry declared independence. They announced multi-million-dollar deals, planted themselves in California, and tried to build a new life as A-list influencers. They weren't royals anymore, not in practice. They were global celebrities. But here's the trap. Celebrities need constant visibility. And visibility, in Hollywood terms, means relevance. Without relevance, the calls dry up. The deals collapse. The spotlight moves on. Meghan knew this. She wasn't blind. That's why her post-royal life wasn't just about philanthropy or privacy. It was about positioning herself as a figure so iconic that she didn't need Buckingham Palace to validate her. She wanted to be seen as an equal to Hollywood's elite, an equal to the women who defined culture. And in her mind, fashion was the quickest, sharpest way to make that happen. But there was a problem. Fashion has its own rules. And Meghan, for all her carefully curated outfits, was an outsider. Let's look at Meghan's fashion track record. On royal duty, she leaned heavily into neutral palettes. Beiges, whites, blacks, always polished, always chic, but rarely daring. She preferred safe elegance over runway risks. But safe doesn't crown you a fashion icon. It doesn't land you on covers beside supermodels. It lands you in the nice, but forgettable category. Meanwhile, Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner weren't just wearing clothes. They were commanding fashion. They weren't showing up in someone else's designs. They were creating moments. Viral runway struts. Avant-garde photo shoots. Collaborations that blurred the line between model and mogul. They were living, breathing extensions of Vogue's brand of cultural dominance. So when Gigi and Kendall landed the 2025 Vogue cover together, it wasn't surprising. It was inevitable. They were the natural choice, youthful, influential, marketable. Their cover was vibrant, futuristic, and dripping with relevance. And for Meghan, watching from the sidelines, it must have felt like a slap. Because here's the irony. Meghan wanted to project herself as one of them. A modern, global woman shaping trends, not just following them. But while Gigi and Kendall were cementing their legacies, Meghan was struggling to hold on to hers. Now imagine the timing. Gigi's Vogue shoot drops. Kendall beams alongside her, both looking untouchable in their prime. The fashion world explodes with praise. And then, days later, Meghan steps out in public wearing an outfit nearly identical to Gigi's shoot look. Same silhouette, same muted sophistication, same statement vibe. Was it deliberate? Was Meghan sending a message to Vogue, to Anna Wintour, to the world? I belong in this conversation. Or was it a miscalculation, a subconscious borrowing that only highlighted the gap between her and the women she wanted to emulate? This is where Meghan's strategy reveals its flaw. In Hollywood, copying can sometimes be forgiven. Stars recycle trends all the time. But in fashion, copying is a cardinal sin. Vogue is about originality, exclusivity, being first. Meghan's choice looked like mimicry. And mimicry, in Anna Wintour's eyes, is weakness. But let's not gloss over Meghan's ambition here. She wasn't content to fade into the background. She wasn't content to be known as Harry's wife or the duchess who left. She wanted her own cultural crown. And for her, that crown was a Vogue cover. Not just any cover. A U.S. Vogue cover. The pinnacle. The page that says, "This is who America, and by extension the world, should look up to." She had tasted the edges of it before. Remember British Vogue in 2019? Meghan edited the issue, spotlighting women she considered forces for change. It was groundbreaking in concept, but polarizing in execution. She appeared in promotional materials, but not on the cover itself. She said she didn't want it to be self-serving. But insiders whispered that Anna Wintour had made it clear Meghan wouldn't be the cover star. Not then. Not now. Not ever. And that stung. Because when Anna Wintour closes the door, it's not just about that one cover. It's a statement to the entire industry. Meghan could appear on People. She could pose for Time. But without Vogue, she was forever on the outside. So the Gigi Kindle cover wasn't just a photo shoot. It was a reminder, a neon billboard declaring who was in and who was out. And Meghan? She was out. But Meghan isn't someone who accepts being sidelined. She recalibrates. She rebrands. She finds another way to insert herself into the narrative. The copycat outfit wasn't an accident. It was a strategy. A way to say, see me, compare me, remember me. But here's the bitter twist. Instead of being remembered as Vogue-worthy, Meghan was remembered as a mimic. And the whispers in fashion circles grew louder. If Meghan can't even step out without borrowing someone else's look, how can she ever lead the conversation? It's a contradiction Meghan can't escape. She wants to be Diana, remembered for her fashion legacy. She wants to be Kate, effortlessly gracing the cover. She wants to be Gigi, defining trends. But in trying to be all of them, she becomes none of them. And this is where the stakes get higher. Because Meghan's Hollywood rebrand depends on fashion credibility. Her deals, her projects, her influence. All of it relies on her being seen as relevant, aspirational, powerful. Without fashion validation, especially from Vogue, her brand risks collapsing. So what happens when the woman who walked away from the crown can't secure the cover? What happens when the strategy to prove her relevance backfires into accusations of imitation? What happens when Anna Wintour's no becomes an entire industry's no? The answer isn't just about Meghan. It's about the brutal hierarchy of fashion itself. And once you see how that hierarchy works, you'll understand why Meghan was doomed from the start. But the moment Meghan's outfit went viral, when the side-by-side comparisons hit the internet, when even her fans struggled to defend her, something shifted. The call started, not to Meghan, but to Vogue. Fashion insiders wanted to know, had Meghan crossed a line? And the answer they got would only deepen the scandal. They said Meghan Markle's outfit was just another photo op. But fashion insiders knew better. It wasn't the clothes, it was the timing. Days after Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner's 2025 Vogue spread dropped, Meghan appeared in near-identical styling. The resemblance was uncanny. The sleek tailoring, the muted sophistication, the aura of carefully staged modern chic. To casual eyes, it was elegant. To the fashion world, it was something more dangerous, a copy. And in fashion, copying isn't flattery. It's exposure. It's pulling back the curtain to reveal that you're not setting the stage. You're standing in the wings, watching, imitating, hoping the spotlight brushes your face for a second. Meghan had gone from duchess to mimic, and the fashion elite noticed. Ask yourself, was it coincidence? Could it have been that Meghan's stylist just happened to pull an outfit eerily similar to one of the most publicized Vogue spreads of the year? Or was this a calculated attempt to insert Meghan into the conversation, to steal a piece of the cultural thunder generated by Gigi and Kendall? If it was coincidence, it was catastrophic timing. If it was calculated, it was worse, because it screamed desperation. Let's paint the scene. The paparazzi shots hit social media within hours. Meghan, smiling for the cameras, looked poised. But then the side-by-side comparisons surfaced. One tabloid posted the images under the headline, Meghan's mirror moment. Who wore it first? Instagram fashion accounts dissected the similarities, frame by frame. TikTok creators made viral videos layering Meghan's look over Gigi's cover shoot, syncing them to mocking audio. And then came the real blow. Vogue insiders saw it. Fashion editors noticed. Stylists whispered. The industry doesn't forgive imitation, especially when it follows on the heels of an Anna Wintour rejection. For Meghan, the message was clear. Instead of forcing her way into relevance, she had underlined exactly why Vogue had said no in the first place. Let's dig deeper. Meghan's fashion narrative has always been carefully curated, but rarely original. On royal tours, she gravitated toward established designers, Givenchy, Dior, Armani, classic houses that offered safety. When she did experiment, critics pounced, calling her choices ill-fitting or try-hard. Compare that to someone like Rihanna, who can step out in anything and make it a trend. Meghan never set the pace. She followed it. So when she appeared in a look mirroring Gigi Hadid's, the story practically wrote itself. Meghan wasn't leading, she was borrowing. And the sting was sharper because Gigi and Kendall's Vogue cover was more than just fashion, it was cultural dominance. Meghan was attempting to attach herself to that dominance without being invited. But here's where it gets even messier. Fashion PR is a battlefield. When someone of Meghan's stature makes a move like this, it doesn't go unnoticed by the players who shape the narrative. Stylists gossip. Editors trade notes. Designers weigh whether they want their brand linked to someone accused of mimicry. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't the woman denied a Vogue cover. She was the woman accused of trying to hijack one. And the audience? They smelled blood. Meghan's critics mocked her relentlessly online. She wants to be Gigi so badly. Imagine being 40 and cosplaying a 20-something model. Even her supporters struggled to defend her. Some argued it was just a coincidence. Others claimed she was paying homage. But in fashion, defense rarely matters. Perception is reality. And the perception was brutal. Meghan was copying. But why does it matter so much? Because in the world of celebrity branding, image is everything. Meghan has no royal duties to tether her. No official role to validate her. Her brand is built entirely on perception. How she looks, how she presents, how she positions herself against Hollywood's elite. And in that fragile economy, one moment of mimicry can collapse the illusion of originality she's been trying to sell. Here's the contradiction. Meghan wants to be Diana, authentic, iconic, unforgettable. But Diana never copied. Diana defined. Meghan wants to be Gigi, youthful, relevant, aspirational. But Gigi leads trends while Meghan echoes them. Meghan wants to be Kate. Graceful, naturally Vogue-worthy. But Kate's power lies in understatement, while Meghan is overproduced. The tragedy is that in chasing these women's shadows, Meghan loses her own shape. And Anna Wintour? She doesn't miss details like this. Reports whispered through fashion circles that Anna's team flagged Meghan's outfit. The timing, the similarity, the optics. If there was ever a sliver of a chance for Meghan to land that coveted cover in the future, it had evaporated the moment those comparison images went viral. But the humiliation didn't stop there. Behind closed doors, calls began. Editors questioned whether Meghan's PR team had orchestrated the look as a stunt. Stylists speculated whether Meghan was trying to bait Vogue into a reaction. Designers hesitated about sending Meghan samples, worried they'd end up at the center of another scandal. The copycat label was sticking, and in fashion, labels can be career-ending. And yet, Meghan wasn't silent. Sources suggest her camp doubled down, insisting the outfit was her own choice, unrelated to Gigi's spread. But the denial only made the story louder. Because when the whole world sees two nearly identical looks, no statement can erase the visual. Ask yourself, what's worse? Being ignored by Vogue, or being mocked for trying to copy Vogue? For Meghan, it was both. She didn't just fail to secure the crown she wanted. She slipped in the attempt, and the fall was public. And here's where the cliffhanger sharpens. Because the fashion world wasn't content to just laugh at Meghan. No, whispers began that Anna Wintour herself had taken note. And when Anna notices, things don't stay quiet for long. So what happens when the most powerful woman in fashion allegedly takes a stand? Not with words, but with silence. What happens when Meghan's attempt to claw her way into relevance only cements her as an outsider? The answer would shake more than just Meghan's brand. It would ripple through Hollywood, fashion, and even the royal narrative itself. They said the walls of Vogue are impenetrable, but Meghan Markle thought she had a key. Or at least, she thought she could find one. When the comparisons between her outfit and Gigi Hadid's 2025 Vogue look began dominating social media, the chatter wasn't just about fashion. It was about power. Because in the fashion world, the real question is this: who gets to decide who belongs and who doesn't? And that answer always leads back to one name: Anna Wintour. Inside Vogue's glass towers, decisions aren't made casually. Covers aren't handed out like party favors. They're calculated, ruthless, and strategic. The editors weigh everything: relevance, influence, advertiser appeal, and cultural timing. One misstep could sink an issue's impact. And Anna Wintour, the woman who has ruled this empire for over 3 decades, doesn't tolerate missteps. She decides who's in, who's out, and who never gets through the door. Meghan, for all her ambition, wasn't in. And here's the sting. Meghan knows exactly what Vogue represents. It isn't just a magazine. It's a cultural throne. Diana sat on it. Kate sat on it. Gigi and Kendall just took their turn. Meghan, who has crafted her entire post-royal identity around being seen and validated, understood that without Vogue's blessing, she would always be a pretender, never a queen in fashion's eyes. But behind the velvet curtains of Vogue HQ, Meghan wasn't even close to consideration. Editors whispered that she was too political. Others said she was too divisive. Advertisers quietly signaled hesitation, worried that a Meghan cover would spark more backlash than sales. And Anna? She didn't even need to raise her voice. Her silence was the loudest no of all. That's the brutality of Vogue's inner sanctum. You don't always hear rejection. You feel it in the vacuum. No callbacks. No exploratory emails. Just a cold absence. For Meghan, who had once been given the chance to edit British Vogue's most important issue, the silence was deafening. But here's the twist. Meghan wasn't content to let the silence stand. According to Hollywood insiders, her team began pushing. PR representatives reached out to editors. Agents whispered to stylists. The message was clear. Meghan was interested. Meghan was available. Meghan was cover-worthy. The response? A polite but firm wall. See, Vogue operates on something Meghan has struggled to grasp: authenticity. Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner aren't universally adored, but they embody a kind of cultural relevance Meghan can't replicate. They're of the moment. They breathe fashion. Meghan, by contrast, feels manufactured. Too polished. Too desperate. And in Anna Wintour's empire, desperation is poison. Ask yourself this. Why would Vogue risk its reputation on Meghan Markle when the safer, shinier, more culturally dominant options are already on the table? Why gamble on controversy when you can cash in on consistency? For Anna, it wasn't a hard call. Meghan wasn't worth the risk. But Meghan, characteristically, didn't give up. And this is where the story turns intriguing. The more Anna ignored her, the harder Meghan pushed. Rumors swirled that Meghan tried alternative routes, suggesting themed issues, proposing cover tie-ins with her activism, even dangling the allure of a joint feature with Harry. None of it worked. Anna's silence remained unbroken. And here's where irony sharpens its knife. Because while Meghan was trying to maneuver her way into Vogue's sacred pages, Gigi and Kendall were effortlessly commanding them. Meghan wanted to be seen as aspirational, but she was being cast as redundant. She wanted to lead fashion conversations, but she was reduced to mimicking someone else's look. Every move she made only highlighted the gap. And Anna Wintour? She's known for recognizing weakness instantly. Her empire is built on instincts. If she sensed Meghan was clawing for relevance, she wouldn't extend a hand. She would shut the door tighter. And insiders suggest that's exactly what happened. Meghan wasn't just ignored. She was quietly blacklisted. Think about the implications. Once Anna Wintour decides you're not Vogue material, the ripples spread across the entire fashion world. Photographers hesitate. Designers reconsider. Editors at rival magazines second-guess their pitches. It's not just one magazine cover that disappears. It's an entire pipeline of opportunities. Meghan wasn't just denied Vogue. She was denied the halo effect that comes with Vogue. And here's the emotional core of it all. Meghan Markle, a woman who once walked behind Queen Elizabeth at royal processions, now found herself locked out of a fashion kingdom she believed was hers for the taking. The fall wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. But this is Meghan Markle. She doesn't back down. Every no has only pushed her to fight harder, to recalibrate, to reframe her narrative. And when the silence from Vogue became unbearable, Meghan reached for other options. Smaller magazines, alternative photo shoots, partnerships that could position her as relevant, even if Vogue wouldn't touch her. The problem? None of it carried the weight she craved. None of it matched the cultural coronation of a Vogue cover. And the fashion world knew it. So ask yourself, what happens when someone who has built her entire post-royal identity on being unstoppable finally meets the immovable force of Anna Wintour? What happens when every tactic, every stunt, every strategic photo op only deepens the perception of desperation? Because Meghan wasn't finished yet. And her next move, the back-channel attempts to force Vogue's hand, would only push her deeper into the spotlight she couldn't control. But what came out of those back-channel maneuvers? That's where the scandal truly ignited. They said Meghan Markle had learned the art of persistence in Hollywood. But persistence, when it brushes against Anna Wintour's iron wall, doesn't look like determination. It looks like desperation. And desperation, in the world of fashion, is fatal. Because after the icy silence from Vogue, Meghan didn't just lick her wounds and retreat. She doubled down. She activated the network, PR firms, agents, Hollywood stylists, friendly editors. Calls were made. Pitches were floated. Emails circulated quietly through the editorial circuit. The strategy was simple. If Vogue wouldn't extend the invitation, Meghan would keep knocking until they had no choice but to answer. But here's where the cracks began to show. In the rarefied air of high fashion, backchanneling is a dangerous game. A-list stars don't beg for covers, they're offered them. Rihanna doesn't pitch Vogue. Zendaya doesn't send her team to plead. The cover comes to them, as a recognition of power. Meghan, trying to reverse engineer that dynamic, exposed her weakness. Think about it. Every whisper from Meghan's team, every rumor of her availability, reinforced the perception that she wanted Vogue more than Vogue wanted her. And Anna Wintour? She's a master at sniffing out neediness. The moment she senses you're chasing the crown, she takes it away. That's how she's maintained her throne for decades, by rewarding confidence and punishing desperation. Insiders began talking. One source claimed that Meghan's team suggested a special issue themed around women reinventing themselves. Another floated the idea of Meghan and Harry together on a glossy couple spread, framed as America's new power pair. Yet another rumor suggested Meghan wanted an activism-driven cover to align with her humanitarian branding. But here's the problem. Vogue's advertisers didn't bite. Meghan's name didn't test well. She was polarizing, beloved by her base, ridiculed by her critics, and dismissed by fashion purists who saw her as more politician than style icon. And Anna Wintour, ever calculating, wasn't about to gamble her magazine's prestige on someone who could tank an issue's sales. And then came the Gigi Kindle problem. Meghan wasn't just competing for space on Vogue's pages. She was competing against women half her age, deeply embedded in the fashion machine and unburdened by controversy. Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner weren't begging for relevance. They were living it, breathing it, commanding it. Their cover wasn't pitched. It was inevitable. Meghan's cover? It was being force-fed, and everyone could taste it. Now let's pause here. Imagine being Meghan. Once a duchess, once hailed as the fresh face of modern royalty. You walk away from the palace, convinced you can build something bigger, freer, more glamorous. And yet, years later, you're still knocking at doors that slam shut in your face. Imagine how that burns. Imagine the humiliation of realizing that all the titles, all the interviews, all the Netflix deals haven't bought you the one thing you crave most, Anna Wintour's approval. That humiliation turned into strategy. And Meghan's team, ever relentless, began pivoting. If Vogue wouldn't play, maybe smaller magazines would. Maybe collaborations with lesser-known editors could build momentum. Maybe flooding the market with Meghan's image would force Vogue's hand, making it impossible to ignore her. But here's the catch. In fashion, oversaturation is a death sentence. If you're everywhere, you're nowhere. Vogue doesn't chase trends, it defines them. And Meghan, by flooding the market, only made herself look cheaper, more available, less exclusive. The opposite of what Vogue wants in a cover star. And Hollywood began to notice. Meghan wasn't being whispered about as the next big thing anymore. She was being mocked as someone clawing for relevance, someone who couldn't land the big prize. Stylists rolled their eyes. Editors dismissed her pitches. Designers hesitated. And Anna? She didn't need to say a word. Her silence was enough to turn Meghan into a pariah in the very world she wanted to dominate. But Meghan still had one move left. If she couldn't get Vogue through the front door, maybe she could sneak in through the side. Rumors began swirling of Meghan trying to leverage friendships in Hollywood's elite circles. Connections to designers. Dinners with industry power players. Quiet lunches where her name accidentally came up as a potential cover star. The strategy was clear. Force Vogue to reconsider by making it seem like Meghan was already part of the conversation. And yet, every attempt only seemed to backfire. The more Meghan inserted herself, the more obvious her absence from Vogue's pages became. Her name wasn't alongside Gigi's, Kendall's, Rihanna's, or Zendaya's. It was orbiting on the outside, desperately trying to break through. And this is where the story takes a brutal twist. Because the more Meghan pushed, the more Hollywood's A-list began to quietly push back. Her attempts to strong-arm her way into Vogue's sacred pages didn't just irritate Anna Wintour. They irritated the entire industry. And soon, whispers began circulating, not about Meghan's potential, but about her desperation. And desperation, once it becomes your brand, is impossible to shake. But here's the question. If Meghan couldn't secure Vogue through persistence, what would she do next? Would she settle for the smaller covers? Or would she risk humiliating herself even further by going bigger, louder, and bolder? Because the next chapter of this story isn't about Vogue rejecting Meghan. It's about Meghan trying to outmaneuver the rejection and failing spectacularly. They said the fashion world was glamorous. But behind the sequins and champagne flutes, it's a battlefield, brutal, unforgiving, and hierarchical. Meghan Markle, convinced she could bulldoze her way into its upper echelons, was about to learn just how merciless that hierarchy could be. At its core, fashion is a pyramid. At the very top sits Anna Wintour, the eternal gatekeeper. Beneath her, the supermodels, your Gigi Hadids, Kendall Jenners, Naomi Campbells, faces that don't just wear clothes but sell fantasies. Below them, the A-list celebrities, Rihanna, Zendaya, Beyoncé. These are women who live at the intersection of music, acting, and fashion, seamlessly commanding the spotlight across industries. And at the bottom, the aspirants, the outsiders clawing for a place at the table. Meghan thought she belonged at the top. After all, hadn't she married into the most famous family in the world? Hadn't she commanded global headlines with Megxit? Hadn't Netflix and Oprah validated her relevance? In her mind, stepping into fashion royalty was the natural next chapter. But to Anna Wintour and the wider industry, Meghan wasn't fashion's future. She was Hollywood's leftover. Now let's compare Meghan's trajectory to Diana's. Princess Diana wasn't just a royal. She became a fashion icon by accident. Her choices weren't calculated pitches to magazines. They were moments of authenticity. Her revenge dress, her off-duty sweaters, her casual elegance, that transformed into cultural milestones. Diana didn't chase Vogue. Vogue chased Diana. Kate Middleton, too, represents a different archetype. Her centenary British Vogue cover in 2016 worked precisely because she wasn't pushing for it. She allowed Vogue to frame her as accessible, understated, and naturally stylish. The cover was celebrated for its humility, not its ambition. Kate didn't need Vogue. Vogue needed Kate. Meghan? She flipped the formula. Instead of Vogue chasing her, she chased Vogue. Instead of embodying effortless style, she mimicked others. And that mimicry, most infamously with the Gigi Hadid outfit, exposed her as someone desperate to climb the hierarchy rather than someone who belonged at the top of it. The irony couldn't be sharper. Meghan wanted Diana's legacy, but her actions mirrored something else entirely: imitation. Diana was remembered for originality. Meghan was becoming synonymous with desperation. Let's take Gigi Hadid as the foil. Gigi doesn't beg for covers. She lands them because she is the moment. Every runway appearance becomes a headline. Every collaboration turns into a cultural touchstone. Kendall Jenner, for all the criticism she faces as a Nepo baby, has earned her stripes in the industry. Her Vogue shoots are backed by years of runway experience, brand partnerships, and relevance among Gen Z. Together, Gigi and Kendall embody what Vogue wants: youth, energy, influence. Now picture Meghan beside them. Nearly a decade older, embroiled in endless controversies, saddled with the weight of royal baggage, and presenting a brand more political than fashionable. The contrast is glaring. Meghan doesn't amplify Vogue's prestige, she risks diluting it. And here's the brutal truth. In fashion, authenticity is currency. Meghan tried to buy her way in with PR spin, mimicry, and strategic appearances. But authenticity can't be bought. The hierarchy has rules, unwritten but ironclad. Originality gets rewarded, desperation gets punished. And Meghan was breaking those rules in real time. The fallout was immediate. Fashion insiders began to murmur. Designers asked themselves, do we really want Meghan in our pieces if it risks making us look derivative? Editors debated. If Anna has said no, can we risk saying yes? Stylists whispered, she's copying looks now, what's next? And those whispers turned into warnings. Meghan wasn't being talked about as a potential Vogue star anymore. She was being categorized as a risk, a liability. And in the pyramid of fashion, once you're marked as desperate, you don't move up. You slide down. Ask yourself, how did Meghan miscalculate so badly? How did a woman once hailed as a modern-day disruptor end up looking like a follower? The answer lies in her obsession with image control. Meghan has always believed she could shape the narrative, that she could outmaneuver critics with carefully staged interviews, glossy photos, and strategic leaks. But in fashion, control is an illusion. Authenticity leaks through. Desperation seeps out. And when it does, no amount of PR can patch it. The result? Meghan, instead of rising as a fashion icon, was cast as an outsider, an aspirant clawing for recognition in a world that had already decided she didn't belong. And the irony deepens. Because while Meghan was stumbling, her rivals, women like Kate, Gigi, Kendall, and even Diana's enduring ghost, were cementing their places at the top of the hierarchy without lifting a finger. Meghan's every calculated move only highlighted how effortless they seemed. But this story doesn't stop with Meghan being rejected. No, the hierarchy wasn't done with her yet. Because in the brutal world of fashion, when you're marked as desperate, the next step isn't silence. It's humiliation. And that humiliation was about to unfold publicly, as Meghan's copycat scandal transformed from gossip into headlines, and Anna Wintour's shadow loomed larger than ever. They said Meghan Markle could survive criticism. She had faced the tabloids, the royal machine, and even global backlash after Megxit. But nothing could have prepared her for the way the fashion world turned on her. Because fashion doesn't just critique. It ridicules. And ridicule spreads like wildfire. When Meghan stepped out in that look so eerily similar to Gigi Hadid's Vogue ensemble, the internet didn't just notice. It pounced. Twitter accounts posted the side-by-side images with captions dripping in sarcasm. Instagram story polls mocked. Who wore it best? Gigi on Vogue, or Meghan trying to sneak into Vogue? On TikTok, creators layered Meghan's paparazzi shots over Gigi's glossy cover spread, adding clown music or dramatic copycat audio. The virality wasn't in Meghan's favor. And here's the cruelty of the digital age. Once ridicule starts, it can't be contained. Within hours, the hashtags emerged. Hashtag Meghan Copycat. Hashtag Wannabe Vogue. Even hashtag Princess Plagiarist, a brutal play on her royal past, trended for a full day. Each meme, each snide post chipped away at the carefully polished image Meghan had spent years building. Now, Meghan's supporters tried to defend her. They argued the look was a coincidence, that Meghan had worn similar silhouettes long before Gigi. Some claimed she was paying homage to powerful women in fashion, but their voices were drowned out. Because in the court of public opinion, perception is king. And the perception was merciless. Meghan wasn't setting trends. She was chasing them. But the real twist? The mockery didn't just stay online. It began leaking into traditional media. Tabloids ran with headlines like, Meghan Markle's Vogue rejection. Did she try to copy her way in? Fashion blogs dissected her outfit choices, pointing out patterns of inspiration taken from other celebrities. Even late-night comedians slid in a few jokes, framing Meghan as someone who had lost her originality. This was more than just bad press. It was reputational erosion. Meghan, who once positioned herself as a trailblazer, was being painted as a follower. And in the fashion world, being a follower is the kiss of death. Ask yourself, how does someone go from being hailed as a style icon during her royal tours to becoming a punchline for mimicry? The answer lies in context. During her time as Duchess, Meghan's style benefited from novelty. An American actress turned royal, breaking away from tiaras and ball gowns in favor of minimalist chic. But outside the palace, stripped of the royal aura, her fashion had to stand on its own. And that's when the cracks showed. Safe choices, recycled looks, nothing bold enough to silence critics. And then came the whispers from inside Vogue itself. Reports surfaced that Anna Wintour's office had noticed Meghan's outfit, and that the reaction was not favorable. Some editors allegedly rolled their eyes at the obvious mimicry. One source even claimed the phrase, too obvious, was muttered in a meeting. Whether true or not, the rumor spread like gasoline on fire. If Anna Wintour saw Meghan as derivative, the rest of the fashion world would follow. Now imagine Meghan at home in Montecito, scrolling through headlines, watching TikToks mock her, hearing whispers that Anna had dismissed her. The sting must have been unbearable. She wasn't just being rejected quietly. She was being humiliated publicly. And humiliation has consequences. Designers began hesitating to dress her. wary of the ridicule that might follow if another copycat narrative took hold. Stylists stopped suggesting her for features. Even sympathetic editors avoided pushing her name for covers, knowing Vogue's no was absolute. Meghan had gone from aspirant to liability. But here's where it cuts deeper. Meghan had built her brand on control. Every photo, every interview, every statement was carefully managed. And yet, in this moment, she lost control completely. She became the subject, not the author, of the narrative. The internet wasn't discussing her activism, her projects, or even her royal feuds. It was laughing at her outfit. And then the most brutal twist of all, fans of Gigi Hadid began mocking Meghan directly. Fashion influencers called her the Duchess of Duplication. Kendall Jenner's fan base, never shy about their claws, labeled Meghan Vogue's understudy. The overlap of celebrity fandoms meant Meghan wasn't just being attacked by royal critics anymore. She was being dunked on by fashion's fiercest audiences. So what happens when your allies shrink, your critics multiply, and your image begins to crumble under the weight of ridicule? For Meghan, it meant the stakes had never been higher. She couldn't afford to be mocked. She couldn't afford to be ignored. She needed to claw her way back into the conversation before the label of copycat became permanent. And that's when the rumor hit. Anna Wintour herself had allegedly taken note of the scandal. Anna, the woman whose silence had already shut Meghan out, was now paying attention. And if Anna spoke, or even hinted at her disapproval, Meghan's exile from fashion's inner circle would be cemented forever. But here's the cliffhanger. Meghan wasn't ready to accept exile. She had one last card to play, one last strategy to force herself back into the spotlight. And that desperate move would shock not just the fashion world, but Hollywood and the royals too. They said Anna Wintour didn't need to raise her voice, that her silence was enough to end careers. But in Meghan Markle's case, silence wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. And when word spread that Anna herself had allegedly noticed Meghan's copycat scandal, the industry braced for impact. Because when Anna pays attention, the world follows. Let's step inside Vogue's corridors. This is not a place where gossip is ignored. It's dissected, cataloged, and weighed like currency. Editors don't just notice a scandal, they weaponize it. And Meghan's Gigi Hadid mimicry had become prime currency. Quietly, fashion insiders began to murmur. If Meghan Markle can't even walk out her front door without borrowing another woman's look, how could she possibly deserve a Vogue cover? Anna didn't need to issue a press release. She didn't need to tweet. A single raised eyebrow in a meeting, a quiet "not for us" in passing, was enough to send shockwaves across the fashion ecosystem. And insiders claimed exactly that happened. Meghan's name, once whispered in connection with a possible cover, became shorthand for what Vogue would never do. Now let's pause here. Why does Anna's opinion matter so much? Why does her no carry more weight than 1,000 critics online? Because Anna Wintour isn't just the editor of Vogue. She's the queenmaker of fashion. If she elevates you, doors open. Designers flood your inbox. Stylists line up. Endorsements follow. But if she shuts you out, the opposite happens. Doors slam. Collaborations evaporate. Friends disappear. Anna doesn't just control Vogue. She controls the entire culture of fashion. And for Meghan, that meant exile. The humiliation was already public. But Anna's silence made it permanent. Stylists started to hesitate openly, asking, if Anna doesn't back her, why should we? Designers quietly shifted their samples towards safer bets. Rihanna, Zendaya, Florence Pugh. Editors whispered warnings. If Vogue won't touch Meghan, neither should we. And Meghan's camp? They knew it. Sources whispered that her PR team scrambled, trying to frame the narrative as sexism, as bias, as fashion gatekeeping against an outsider. But the strategy didn't stick. Because this wasn't about gender. It wasn't about race. It was about power. And Anna Wintour had all of it. Meghan had none. Imagine the sting of that realization. Meghan Markle, once the darling of the media, once the woman who held millions spellbound with her royal wedding, was now powerless against a single, wordless verdict. Her future in fashion didn't hinge on her outfits, her PR spin, or even her money. It hinged on Anna Wintour's approval, and she didn't have it. But here's the twist. Meghan isn't someone who accepts exile. She has built her entire post-royal career on refusing to disappear. And when Anna's silence threatened to erase her from the fashion map, Meghan decided to go louder. to prove she didn't need Vogue, to show the world she could command attention without Anna's blessing. This was her last card, and she was ready to play it. But here's the cliffhanger. Meghan's attempt to outmaneuver Anna Wintour wouldn't just fail. It would backfire in a way that left her more isolated than ever. Because the next move Meghan made would ignite a backlash even she didn't see coming. They said Meghan Markle had been silenced. That Anna Wintour's wordless rejection was the final nail in the coffin of her fashion ambitions. But Meghan isn't the kind of woman who goes quietly. If Vogue's gilded gates were locked, she would try another door. And that's exactly what she did. She pivoted. When it became clear that Anna wasn't budging, Meghan's team moved fast. If she couldn't have Vogue, she would settle for alternatives. Lesser magazines, digital-first fashion platforms, niche outlets desperate for the clicks that Meghan's name could still generate. Her logic was simple: stack enough small wins, and eventually the pile might rival a giant like Vogue. But here's the truth. Nothing rivals Vogue. And by reaching down instead of up, Meghan exposed the one thing she'd been fighting to hide. She wasn't being invited. She was settling. Let's break it down. She appeared in glossy but mid-tier publications, the kind that look polished but don't carry cultural weight. She offered interviews framed around her philanthropy, her new projects, her reinvention. She pushed stylized photo shoots that tried to echo Vogue's minimalism, but always looked just a touch off. Too forced, too curated, too controlled. The world saw through it. And then came the irony. Instead of elevating her, these appearances emphasized her absence from the only magazine that mattered. Each new feature in a secondary publication read like a consolation prize, a participation trophy, and the comparisons were brutal. One outlet summed it up with a headline that cut to the bone: while Meghan poses in local glossies, Gigi and Kindle rule Vogue. The humiliation deepened when editors began whispering that Meghan wasn't just appearing in these smaller publications. She was offering herself. Industry chatter suggested her team pitched endlessly, even offering exclusive quotes and behind-the-scenes access in exchange for coverage. In a world where the true elites are chased, Meghan was chasing, and everyone knew it. Now, imagine the optics. Here's Meghan, once a duchess, once a global sensation, once editing British Vogue's September issue, now knocking on the doors of second-tier magazines, trying to spin the narrative of relevance. It didn't project power. It projected desperation. And the public noticed. On social media, fans asked, why hasn't Vogue touched her? Critics laughed. From the palace to page 12 of a lifestyle insert. Even neutral observers began asking the unthinkable: had Meghan peaked? But Meghan had one more strategy. If she couldn't rival Vogue directly, she would try to build credibility through partnerships. She explored collaborations with fashion brands, capsule collections, endorsements, curated lines. But here, too, the shadow of Anna Wintour loomed large. Brands that might have considered Meghan hesitated. If Vogue wouldn't back her, why should they risk their reputations? And then came the most brutal blow. Meghan's rivals began to soar in ways that highlighted her fall. Kate Middleton was praised for her effortless elegance at royal events, her wardrobe dissected with admiration across tabloids and blogs. Gigi and Kindle dominated headlines with their Vogue spread, their influence undeniable. Even Princess Diana's fashion legacy resurfaced in retrospectives, reminding the world what true authenticity looked like. Meghan's absence was louder than her presence. Every time another woman shone, Meghan's shadow grew darker. And yet, she pushed harder. She released carefully staged photographs designed to scream fashion icon. She wore bolder looks at public appearances, trying to spark conversation. But the conversations kept circling back to the same question: why isn't she on Vogue? Ask yourself this. What's worse, being invisible or being seen as someone desperate to be seen? For Meghan, the answer was clear. She was visible, but for all the wrong reasons. Every attempt to claw back credibility only reminded the world of the one door that had closed forever. But Meghan wasn't done. If the fashion hierarchy had exiled her, she would try to reinvent herself outside of it. And her next move would be even riskier, stepping into collaborations that blurred the line between activism and branding, trying to sell herself as more than just a would-be cover girl. But here's the cliffhanger. That gamble would not only fail to repair her image, it would deepen the very narrative she was running from. Because in trying to outsmart Anna Wintour, Meghan would discover the one truth no one in fashion survives. Once you're branded desperate, the industry never lets you forget it. They said Meghan Markle wanted to lead. But by this point, it was painfully clear she was following. And in the ruthless world of fashion, following isn't just weakness. It's humiliation. While Meghan scrambled to stitch together credibility with mid-tier magazines and carefully staged appearances, her rivals were effortlessly soaring. Kate Middleton continued her reign as the understated yet powerful style icon of the monarchy. Every coat, every dress, every rewear of a simple high street brand was praised as relatable elegance. It wasn't forced, it wasn't pitched, and it wasn't desperate. It was organic. Then came the Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner factor. Their joint Vogue cover didn't just dominate fashion, it cemented them as cultural forces. The cover was bold, futuristic, and brimming with energy. Every headline celebrated their dominance. Every blog dissected their looks. Their influence wasn't debated, it was assumed. And Meghan? She wasn't just absent from the conversation. She was being compared to it. And the comparisons were brutal. Whispers in the industry turned sharper. She's trying too hard. She doesn't have the relevance. She's chasing what she'll never catch. Those whispers made their way into editorials, into gossip columns, into social media threads. Meghan wasn't being talked.